We've read the obituary of the studio track record failing at film and franchise alike, explaining why their dark universe was DOA from the jump. We've seen the stale competition step up to the Marvel plate just to get the smackdown before they can inevitably strike out. We've heard clickbait websites cuck out to F-grade directors. All that remains is all that is left. How did I know this Gold Digger's plot at a superhero crossover with horror monsters was never going to reach any modicum of success? Well, other than the lacking talent behind it and the purely monetary motivation, absent creative direction behind the scenes, buckle up, kiddies. For you see, I left the best chapter for dead last. I'm about to school you on why you don't want this. Brace yourselves for a history lesson.
Gentlemen, start your screaming!
Frankenstein meets Wolfman. Abbott and Costello. The Monster Squad. Transylvania 6500. Castlevania. House of Frankenstein 1997. Van Helsing. Hotel Transylvania. Do you even realize the Universal Monsters had a revival in the 90s? Penny Dreadful. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Freddy vs. Jason. Alien vs. Predator. Underworld. The Dark Universe. Why was the Dark Universe doomed to failure from the jump? Not so much that you didn't want it, but because you have never wanted this. Anyone remember Death House? That prison movie that was supposed to be the horror Expendables that was utterly forgettable? This serves as proof positive of that unwritten rule: you cannot call out a fad while it is on trend. Look at the first impressions to Resident Evil 5 and The Force Awakens. Heralded as tours de force upon release, now panned and exposed by the passage of time. Mere months afterward, to be honest. Yes, Monster Squad is an awesome movie. It's part of an 80s trilogy I plan to cover. I respect the Castlevania games, but folks, look at the laundry list of failures that I just mentioned. The only time this has ever worked was as a R-rated film for kids? Process that. And the Castlevania games had monster cameos, but went right back to Dracula anyway. From YouTube geeks to crony websites prostrating themselves as glorified spokespeople for this cinematic dead end, clapping their flippers together like trained damn seals, never once considering the blatant drawbacks.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Please believe that whether director, producer, or studio head, there was every intention, stated or unspoken, to turn this...
Children of the night, what music they make.
Into this...
You want me to put the hammer down?
As if the aborted attempts at a shared cinematic universe weren't embarrassing enough, look at the afterbirth of what the landscape was like post-Avengers. Talk of a Shyamalan shared universe. Stephen King shared universe. Bones and Sleepy Hollow crossover. Talk of Transformers meets G.I. Joe. The Ring versus The Grudge. The Flash versus Green Arrow. Spider-Man Dark Universe. Didn't Ryan Murphy's American Horror Story Season 8 comprise of a crossover? The Dark Universe, the Monster Universe, Conjuring Universe, Cloverfield Universe. How would a Stephen King universe even work? Clowns chasing children of the cornfields where dead pets are buried, but also an Indian burial ground where the Overlook Hotel was built on top of?
Okay, Marge, you hide in the abandoned amusement park. Lisa, the pet cemetery. Bart, spooky roller disco. And I'll go skinny dipping in that lake where the sexy teens were killed 100 years ago tonight.
It's bad enough that horror had the millennium fads of J-horror, zombie apocalypse, torture porn, remakes, found footage, but this horror hero crap was worse than when the genre was chasing prequel trends and the 3D craze. This was always going to fail, and I'll do you one better. It deserved to fail. Now that the Venom movie was successful, somehow, people are clamoring for their dark take on comics with Morbius and Carnage. Guys, Sony is the same studio that mismanaged their biggest cash cow, which is why you had 3 different Spider-Men in 1 decade. You honestly expect them to expertly execute a horror universe of comic books. From the company that disgraced the Resident Evil movies. Good luck with that. So the Dud universe started out as a cash grab, turned into a joke, botched its millennial resurgence, is handled by money-grubbing incompetence, you despise its decent attempts, and there is exactly zero direction or template for these remakes and mashups to follow. You honestly think this can be pulled off in an age of incompetent charlatans and cash-in remakes? You expect that the first great film franchise will be treated with the reverence it deserves for its 90-year legacy? Surely you jest.
And don't call me Shirley.
With franchise fatigue being a real thing, superhero saturation, the significance of the aptly named Endgame, I almost want you to learn your lesson except for 2 things. Firstly, it would come at the cost of further tarnishing the legacy of the Gothic forefathers. And number 2, who am I kidding? You wouldn't learn to avoid hype trains anyway. Horror fans sure didn't learn their lesson when they touted M. Night Shyamalan as the next Steven Spielberg. The powers that be and the powers that wanna be don't have what it takes to deliver the goods. Their interest is in profit margins and bottom lines, not legacy, not lineage, not a formula for success. That's a recipe for disaster. The Dud universe has had as many false starts as Fox had climaxes to the X-Men franchise. If I can circle the wagons back to that propaganda foundry, IGN, I remember reading an article from that site that served as a prime example of a broken clock being right at least twice a day. Entitled, "Whatever Happened to Supervillains?", they revealed the importance of bad guys and the role they serve in storytelling. Gee, I wish that scary movies would learn that lesson, since the entirety of the horror genre is predicated on its villains. Maybe if that epiphany dawned, we would get a memorable movie monster again after over 20 years instead of retreading the Gothic forefathers from 90 years ago. It leaves me asking, where are the horror icons at? Part of the reason, and an overlooked ingredient over why Kevin Feige has been successful, is because he has respect for the characters under his stewardship, and no matter the fluff piece or the advertisement, that level of reverence can't be faked. Can't be replicated, but it should be returned. And when you have some corporate suit publicly state his intention to get the horror out of the Universal monsters, you're not just off to a rough start, you're speeding towards a train wreck. And always, always remember, I ain't a big deal, I'm just the real deal.
Warn your friends. Warn everyone.